Okay, so there's different ways that you can select these properties that we want to style. So we can use the tag name, which I've already shown you in the CSS file or in the head. You can use a class name. Class name is always prefixed with a dot, okay? So I'm going to show you some of that a bit later on. I just want to talk to you about the different ways that you can use CSS selectors. If you want to be even more specific, we can use an ID element. So in this case, I'll use pound sign for that. But in this case, it will be the site header, and we're changing the color of just the header to green. Okay, so finally, just to say that you can combine selectors. Okay, so in this particular instance, what I'm saying here is that you can have all the elements with a class name coffee type that are in a paragraph tag can have the color yellow applied. Okay, so you got your tag name, which is the general styling that you've seen, headers, paragraphs, I don't know, divs. You can style a class name, and in the CSS you'll know it's a class because it's got a dot in front. And you can style elements, they use a pound sign in front. You can also combine them. So this is anything that's class coffee type in a paragraph tag. And this is kind of a way, I guess, to change things. You know, this is going to override, say, just that. Okay, so it's getting much more specific. I hope that is helpful. Essentially, we're using a logical AND operator applied to the elements. If it's in the paragraph tag and it's class name coffee type, please make it the color yellow. So if you look at here are some pseudo classes. Well, we've got links. This is I want to show you this one in particular because I mean you're not going to be expected to learn all of these tags, but there are some really crucial ones that help you to have some really, you know, effective styling, if you like, using just colors. And this one happens to be the one for the links, you know, when you roll over things or you hover over things. What this particular style is doing is looking at, so any links are going to be blue, so any hyperlinks. When they've been visited, so if somebody clicks on it, it's going to turn red. If it's active, so if you've clicked on it, it goes red. And if you hover over it, it will go green. So these are really useful selectors that can really help you to show interactivity quite quickly on a website. Okay, some common CSS elements I thought I'd talk to you about. There's loads, so we're not going to go over all of them, but just some of the common ones. You've got color. So you can specify a specific property in your sheet to have a certain color. For example, the header tag could just be a color. We're using the hex color references for this, or you can just type in a color. This is a lot more specific and you'll get the exact color that you asked for this way. I talked about this in the design elements of your NEA. The background is a very common element that is styled using the style sheet. You can have just a whole body being yellow, or you can put an image in the background. It's common to use shorthand for our styles for the background, and this is an example. In the body you've got, this is the color of the background, but then there's a URL that we're also going to put, so we're going to put an image in the background along, and so we'll have a background color, and then there's going to be an image there as well. We're not going to repeat the image, so it's only going to appear once. It's going to be fixed in the center. So in this particular instance, background 001 might not be an image that is large enough to say spread across the whole of the page, but we know we want to make some kind of a pattern in the background, or a specific image is relevant for the background. So this is an example of shorthand here. Okay, there's also text and fonts. These are the common things that we can style with our CSS. So this is an example of using just a simple paragraph tag. Again, remember you can have loads of different elements, but here I'm saying I want the font size to be 100%. You could change that to be 2 pixels, for example. Okay, it doesn't have to be 100%. I'm just saying that. And then you can style headers, so you can have text, decoration, underline. This is an interesting one because with this you can specify, you know, like when you've got a link or a navigation, you can take the underline off because it seems to default when you've got a hyperlink to having it underlined, which can be a bit irritating. Okay, another element that I'd like you to have a think about is the CSS box model. It's something that's important to talk about because it really helps us to understand how the pages are being laid out. So we already spoke to you about the margins. Well, the margins appear on the outside of the page, so the content is literally, it could be of a box, you could be trying to make a divider. This is better to use than tables, by the way. But if you had something like a small sort of a paragraph or a heading that you wanted to sort of play about with, you could add a margin to it, you can have borders with it, then you've got padding, and then the content, literally the focus is on the width and the height. So the padding just clears an area around the content. So the border literally clears an area around the padding and the content. And then of course the margin, as I've said, it literally is around all of the other content. Okay, so around all of the other content. So you can see how from one little page or one little area that you're trying to style, you could have end up having quite a tiny bit of content, and you're thinking, why is it all being wrapped around? Why aren't I fitting more in this particular element? And the reason for that is just because of all these other elements in the box model. But using this kind of styling is better than to use a table, because when you're trying to resize your web page, a table doesn't always work very well.